Hello YouTube, vintage stereo restores and tube radio restores. So here we are, December 31st, and it's my last video of the year. What can I say? My last restoration of the year. I wanted to finish this one a week ago, but I haven't done as many videos over the holidays, and it seems everybody is like, there's a lot of people who just take the time off and disappear. Okay? I can't really do that, but I thought when I started this one, just before Christmas, I thought I'll take my time on it. I know that sounds weird, but I'm so used to being under the gun as a tech years ago, whether it was in the phone business, whether it was in the IT business, or in repairing electronics. Anyway, let me just do a little overview on this. So, I refinished the cabinet, and what I did was I used my heat gun to strip off some kind of varnish or lacquer. It looked like lacquer the way it came off. It literally was bubble, 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 scrape, and a bit of sanding. Some 100 grit, then some 220. And then I used Varathane oil products, like regular stain. Came out I thought very nice, really brought the grain out nicely. I had to put a new cloth. The grill cloth was in terrible shape. This is the last piece of vintage grill cloth I have. And it has a fold in it, which I'm hoping will just settle out. I glued it in last night. There is a little line there. And sometimes what you can do is put some water on it, and then it will dry better. But it was the last little piece of this cloth I had. I liked the look of it. I thought it goes good with it. And it's a shame. I did lose the serenade script, but it was just too fragile to save. Sometimes you save. I'm not really a wood guy. My grandfather taught me a lot about. He was the cabinet maker. I would just hang out with him and help him out, do the heavy lifting in his later years. He built stuff right up until he was 87. So anyway, that's ready. And the radio, I've been working on it here and there between, company coming over for dinner and different stuff like that. And we did cover it in another video. We're doing some repairs on it. I had to do a few extra repairs on it because once I finished the restoration, doing the caps and resistors, it wasn't sounding that great. See if I can get it here. I have a bin with a bunch of parts in it. There it is. So the tuning cap that was in here, it had corrosion between the wafers. It was making it not work so well. Very hard to repair something like that. I had exactly the same one in a parts bin. I couldn't believe it. These were made by Defiance, made in USA. Those are the good days. This one is exactly the same. I was able to bolt it and solder it in, make a little adjustment with the needle. It wasn't grabbing quite as well, but I fixed that. Put a new string on it so it turns really nicely and there's no noise. You might as well fire it up. One thing I like about these that have the chassis that comes out with the speaker, whoever designed that, now that was a good idea, right? As far as the tubes go, I didn't get out my tube tester because it weighs 30 pounds and it's kind of out of the way right now. What I did find is that 3 of the 5 tubes were having problems. And it goes back to when I used to work on these when I was younger. First of all, it just seemed that this doesn't have an RF amp, so this tube, which is the oscillator tube, it was just a little bit off key. And there was some motor boating. When the cap was fully closed, it was motor boating through the speaker. The 12SA7, so I had a new old stock one, put that in a Westinghouse, just like the Westinghouse that was in there. And then
download the Local Ride app. Local rates are always 20% lower and no surge pricing ever.
I was finding it a little bit hard to align this IF can. There was some whistling that was the 12SK7, which does quite a bit of work in one of these. So I replaced that one. Didn't test any, just replace it, and it just kept getting better and better. You can actually, if you've got the spare tubes, you can verify the tubes just by putting ones in that you know that are good. This 35L6 is a replacement. It's a Marconi, or as a kid I called Macaroni brand. Used to be on radios and TVs. The 35L6 that was in here, I was just in here last night. I had the lights kind of low because I had a bit of a headache, and I noticed this tube had a little bit of the purple glow going. You know what I mean? When they get old, and it had quite a bit. As far as age marks go, let's go through my junk in here. Here it is. This one here, a lot of that discoloring is on the inside. And it had that purple plasma glow going. And I was just like, that one's not going to last. So I had this one. I have so many 35L6s and 50L6s from doing All-American 5 radios that there's always a good one. So now it's not crackling, it's picking up lots of stations.
When you order before January
Well, for AM. This station is hard to get. It's an oldie station, AM 740. This light causes it issues. So this works good for a 5-tuber. 6-tubers that have the extra RF stage are much more sensitive. But this works kind of nice there. There's no hum down at idle. And I put my meter on key points to check voltages. Now this is on, I know. But there's a few voltages you can check on these. Of course, at the filter caps. First check you should do is with it on and insulated shoes. You touch the chassis to a ground point. A ground point over here is 0 volts. So the safety cap is working and the polarized cord is working. So that's good. I check everyone like that. Now, this here is a B minus point. Boy, this is stiff. So we should show some voltage over here. 119, 82. So it drops it through this resistor, which is, it's a little hot. Over here is the, so change the ranges. It's the cap resistor gimmick. That's on the cathode of the output tube, 4.8. So it should be about 5 volts. So that's where it should be. There's other things you can touch. Don't not touch. You can check. I check to make sure none of these are running too hot. This resistor here, that's the dropping resistor in the series string. It'd be interesting to see. It should be dropping, I'm thinking, 12 to 16 volts, depending how hot the AC is coming into the house. So 18 volts, dropping quite a bit. So you have 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 36 plus 36 plus that. Don't ask me to do the math, I don't have a calculator. Okay, so this thing's working nicely. Just be careful when they're on what you touch. Or don't touch anything. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the case. It's got kind of a hodgepodge of screws in it, so I got to find some vintage looking screws. Show you what I replaced. So there's all the wax caps in it. That's why it wasn't working so good. That's why I got, I don't even want to touch them. They make such a gooey mess when you're desoldering. You need to have lots of baby wipes around to clean yourself up afterwards. This one, gone. Yeah, so this is sort of like, okay, this would be, how old? 60, 70, it's 80 years old. This is a midlife freshening for this radio. It might last well over 100 years. I wouldn't doubt it. And you know what? I'll bet you we still have AM radio. I know that sounds weird, but who would have thought, like back in the 70s when I was finding these in the garbage and fixing them as a teenager, who would have thought in 2024 there'd be so many AM stations and you'd use it for news and sports and stuff in your car? That satellite radio in your car would sort of be a flop. And as far as FM goes, it's still going strong. And there is digital FM, that's sort of flopped. AM, they use AM stereo, that's sort of flopped. But the core AM and FM technology, which is ancient at this point, still is out there. So there'll be something to listen to. And if not, you could easily like put something on this to... People ask me this all the time. How can I do Bluetooth on one of these? Well, you can actually, there are some little Bluetooth devices you can buy on Amazon, and you can put it across the volume control. The only thing is you gotta be careful with the B-, that it's actually B-, it's actually the neutral blade on the cord, because you don't want that hot going into that little device. So you can actually use capacitors to isolate it. But you can do Bluetooth, or you can find there's some RF signal generators. You can actually make one. Knight Electronics years ago had a really good kit, an AM transmitter kit. Oh, I had a couple of those. That was so much fun making your own radio station. But here's something I did when my kids were younger. There are these things that real estate agents used to use. And it was called iHome or something like that. And it was a unit they put on the premises of a house that was for sale, and it would record a message on a chip, or you run it through a tape recorder or whatever, but it broadcast on AM so people could drive by, turn their AM radio, and on the sign it would say, tune to 1410 for details. And it would be, oh, okay. Hi, this is Chuck, your agent. This is a great place. Please don't go down in the basement without hip waders. Those were, and I got one of those at a garage sale for nothing, and we had an AM radio station. You could do live broadcasts on it. That used to be so much fun. But anyway, last one of the year, I'm going to put it together, put it on a shelf, listen to some of the oldie stations on it. What's coming up next year in 2025? Well, I'm hoping a lot of cool stuff. I've got some kind of a weird juxtaposition of stuff to work on that's been waiting. I've got some of the stuff that I work on a lot, like the Kenwoods and Yamahas and Sansuis. I got a deal on a CA810 Yamaha. It's one of these people that's very hard to get hold of. We have a deal, but haven't picked it up. I want to work on that one. But I also have some bargain basement audio that would just be, first of all, it's amazing that it still works, and secondly, it's what I call the junk, very cheap category. And I just had one given to me. It's a Pulsar, Pulser. They were sold at Canadian Tire, and it looks like a stereo receiver. It's got a cassette deck at one end, and you could put a phone on top of it, but this one didn't have it. And these things were actually the entry level of audio. And believe it or not, I've had a few, and they actually, when they're on a good pair of monitor speakers, are really decent, have good FM. Some of them actually even have a good phono stage. But this is one that was given to me, and I just want to see, there's a lot of, how can I put it, angst this year about saving money. If that makes, you know what I mean? Like, everybody I talk to is like that. People are less likely, okay? I'm going to swing the camera out. Well, okay, I had to run out and do a few things. What happened was, in the time just after I swung the camera over, my wife asked me if I wanted to go out for a coffee and for a muffin, and I said, sounds good. Do you think the thrift stores are open? I think so. So, okay, so I went for coffee, muffin, went to a thrift store, picked up in the box, the Weller 7800, I think it is, or 7200, the soldering gun. the 140 watt version. Picked one of those up. It looks like it's never been used. It's got all the bits in it and everything. And it's like, I've had a few of those and I usually end up selling them. They're not as handy in electronic work. This one is such pristine shape. Anyway, and it was $9. Then they had this Lloyd's stereo. These are about 1980. It's a wide radio. It doesn't have a tape player. Some of them do. It has stereo speakers. It's just basically an AM FM stereo with auxiliary input. Picked that up for $9. Anyway, I have to admit, when the thrift stores come calling, I go. In fact, I gotta thank all the thrift stores around here for actually, there's more than there's ever been, and that's kind of a sign of the times, if you know what I mean. I've got some amazing stereo equipment from thrift stores, and most of them test stuff, so you'll have a green sticker and it'll say, okay, test it. And they'll actually, some of them will actually give you a refund if it doesn't work. Then others have a red sticker and it'll say, not tested as is. Well, it's the Enterprise calling. So anyway, I've got quite a few items. Usually the not working ones, very few people will buy. I actually have out in the garage a couple of pieces that will be coming up in January that were bought as is at a very reasonable price. And in 2025, I want to really reinforce kind of the mantra or the mission statement of my channel, and that's very reasonably priced vintage audio. And it's always, and it's more true than ever. People that are buying stuff, I've had a few items for sale, I don't, that I thought would sell. And what's selling is the lower end, like the 20 watt per channel receivers. And just case in point, I had a Kenwood KR33, which is I think 12 watts per channel, but it's a heavy duty build, sounds like a lot more. And it was sitting around for quite a while, and I just thought, well, okay, I can get, $150 for it. It was the nicest one I've ever seen. Completely recapped and everything. And I brought the price down to $80. And just because I want to bring some cash in, and finally it sells. And then all of a sudden, everything I have that seems to be the price point, is the lower end audio. Of course, there isn't much money in it, but I'm in it for the sound and not so much the money. But it is nice to make some money on a few of them. But just going forward in 2025, I want to concentrate on reasonably priced audio. And some of those items, like that Fisher receiver, Fisher 170, I could have sold that 10 times over. That's how many people have contacted me over that receiver. Just amazing. And it's like 12 watts per channel. There's something about those, and they're in an affordability range. So things are changing, and one thing, a person that really has the pulse of this seems to be Kevin from Skylabs Audio. His videos, like he talks about how things are changing in 2024. He nailed it right on. There's a change away from the monster higher end receivers to the mid-range stuff and the lower end stuff. And then he's brought in some newer stuff like Advanced Paris to kind of balance everything out. And I totally get it. You've got to be in business. You've got to be willing to roll with the punches or with the times. I'm a much smaller operation, of course, but it's interesting, those trends. When I saw that video and he was talking about that, I was like, yeah, exactly, that's what's going on. 2024 is the year that people didn't want to spend very much. And I'm seeing even people that I thought, and I'll just give you an example. I went to somebody's house to pick up a Yamaha CA410. I've done about 3 of these recently. They were very popular back in the day. And this is a guy, I've seen his picture in the paper. He's a well-known lawyer that did criminal cases and stuff. And I said, you're unbelievable, whatever his name is. And I said, yes, I am. And I said, was this, like, tell me the story. He said, oh, I bought this when I was a student. Yeah, hey, that's neat. And he said, yeah, he said, we're clearing some stuff out. He said, we're renting the basement out in our house to some students. Like, really? And he said, it's that or lose the house. I'm just like, what is going on these days? The economy is worse than anybody thinks. That's what I think. People that you thought had stable incomes and could keep everything afloat are struggling, and it's spread out. But as long as there's good sound, good audio, there's always hope. So I hope to have some fun hunting for stuff and some fun restoring it and passing on a few pieces to people that appreciate them. And more importantly, I want to pass on some of the tricks of the trade. I realized nobody would ever come and work for me as an apprentice because I just can't pay them. I can't even pay minimum wage. That's how tight things are. I've had people say, oh, you should take on an apprentice. I go, first of all, there isn't an official apprenticeship program for electronic technician anymore. There used to be. I said, nobody wants to work for that little pay and have to put in that many years to learn the trade. And some people are shocked, well, how long would it take? You know, some of these students are pretty smart. And I said, well, a few years. I said, realistically, I said, with me, about 2 years to get good enough that I was trusted on the better stuff. Anyway, so what I'm doing is imparting knowledge through this YouTube channel. And the little things that come up, you know, like a lot of times I don't have a script or anything. I'm working on something and go, hey, people would want to know about that, like how to do this with these transistors, or how to test this, or how to save time and money. So that's kind of the focus. I have no intentions of monetizing, maybe at some point. I would just like to see the subscriber base grow, and I will never ever ask you to subscribe. I'm not asking you now. If you want to, go for it. Anyway, Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you in 2025.